right, what's up, church? How's everybody doing? Hey, it's so good to have you guys with us, and welcome to all the campuses, everybody watching online. I'm so glad that you're with us this weekend. Well, I'm just gonna kind of dive right in, but before I do, let me just kind of bring you up to speed. Those of you that may be new or you haven't been in the last couple of weeks, we're in this series, Resurrection Stories, where we're talking about this period of time between the resurrection and the ascension, where Jesus, the resurrected Jesus, in bodily form, walking on this planet, has interactions with people, and how the resurrected Jesus changes everything. And it's the exact same, I love the song we sang today, it's the exact same resurrected Jesus from then that's here for us today, that wants to have that same kind of experience with you and I. And whenever you and I have that kind of an experience with a resurrected Jesus, everything changes. And so we've gone through several characters and several stories, and so today we're gonna land in John 20. And so kind of the way we've been doing this series is we've been reading kind of a good bit of the story to kind of grab the context of what's going on. So I'm gonna jump in, John 20, starting in verse 19. So just hang with me, okay? You good? Yeah. Okay, here we go. All right, so John 20, we're gonna start in verse 19. On the evening of that day being Easter Sunday, the first day of the week, the doors were locked. The doors being locked where the disciples were for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." When he had said this, he showed them his hands and his side, and then the disciples were glad when they saw the Lord. Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I'm sending you." And when he had said this, he breathed on them and he said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. And if you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven. If you withhold the forgiveness from any, it is withheld." Verse 24, now Thomas, who was one of the 12, called the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples, they told him, "We have seen the Lord." But Thomas said to them, "Unless I see his hands and the mark of the nails, place my finger into the mark of the nails and place my hand into his side, I will never believe." 8 days later, the disciples were there in that same place again, and Thomas was with them this time. Although the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." And then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands. Put out your hand and place it in my side." And then he said, "Do not disbelieve, but believe." Then Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book, but these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. As if John knew that at some point there would be people kind of like Thomas that struggled to believe. He said, "This is literally the reason I'm writing all of this down. This is why you have this account, is so that you can believe." The question today is, what do we do with doubt? What do we do with doubt? I mean, I don't know about you, I've experienced doubt, right? I've experienced doubt where you just kind of look at this whole thing and you just kind of say, what is this whole Jesus thing? Do I really believe it? And maybe something happens or something, you go through something, you walk through something, and you kind of begin to doubt your faith. You begin to doubt this whole experience. Do these prayers even go anywhere? The things that I'm doing, this whole Jesus life, all the things that I'm working toward, is it actually changing anything? What is this all about? Kind of like Thomas, he's kind of running in a certain direction and everything's just kind of clicking. For like 3 years, it's just like, it's happening. And then all of a sudden, there's this experience that it goes, whoa, wait a minute. This doesn't compute with me anymore. This doesn't add up. This doesn't make sense. Like we were clicking, dude. Church was good. Everything was just working. And I was reading my Bible and everything was happening. It almost was somewhat easy. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this circumstance, this thing sideswiped me. And now I don't know what I believe anymore. I just don't know. I've been there. I've had to ask those kind of questions and wrestle with those kind of things. And here's the problem that we run into, especially those of us that have been around church for a little while. We run into this problem where we kind of put all doubt into one big category. We just kind of lump doubt into this category, and this category is just labeled bad. And we just throw it all in there, and we just chalk it all up as bad. Maybe you grew up in a setting where asking questions, having doubts, your hand got slapped, and you're like, no, you don't ask questions, you just believe. You believe because I told you to believe. Right? That's the kind of mentality that some of us grew up in, and we just kind of look at doubt as it just being a negative or a bad thing, and that's not necessarily the case. There are kind of multiple different categories to doubt. One of those being one that we should avoid. Jesus talks about it. His brother James, his half-brother James talks about it. Actually, in James 1, verse 5, James says this, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea blown and tossed by the wind. Well, that just sounds terrible. Okay, this word, doubt, diakrinos, it means to waver. That's what it means. It means to waver. But when you look at it in the context of this verse, and Jesus actually talks about it in Mark 11 in the exact same way, what he's saying is when you ask God for something, when you're believing God to give you something he's promised, don't waver in that. Don't doubt that God's going to show up. Right? Don't be the kind of Christ follower that asks God for something, but then you don't actually believe he's going to do it. It would be like my wife calling me on my way home from work one day and saying, hey, listen, can you pick up dinner tonight? It's been a hard, stressful day. Can you just go through and pick up some dinner? And I say, sure, absolutely. Go through, grab a little takeout, get home, walk in the house and smell something that is cooking. Walk in the kitchen and go, why are you cooking dinner? You just asked me to go pick up dinner. Why are you cooking dinner? Well, I didn't actually know if you would do it or not. Right? So that is probably not going to build a lot of trust in our relationship, is it? Right? That's an insult. That's her saying, what have I done to ever make you think I'm not going to come through when I tell you I'm going to come through? Right? This is what God is saying. This is what James is saying in this statement. Listen, if God says he's going to do something, don't waver in believing whether or not he's going to do it. Okay, that's what that is all about. There's another kind of doubt that we could call just simply skepticism. Okay, this is another kind of doubt that Thomas is not dealing with. This is not the kind of doubt that he's walking through, but skepticism is kind of this doubt where it's detached. It's somebody that's not engaged at all. You know, some people are wrestling with deep questions of life and faith and where is God and everything. That's not the skeptic. The skeptic is not even in the arena. They're on the outside. They're not wrestling with questions. Their arms are folded off somewhere, and they're kind of antagonistic toward God, almost an enemy of God. Right? Skeptics are the kind of people, and you may fit in that bucket today, but here's the thing about a skeptic. A skeptic is so far removed or back away from God that there are many steps that have to happen to get them to the point of conversion. Okay, there are many, many steps. If conversion is zero on this kind of spiritual continuum, if zero, then a skeptic, -3 and 4 are major milestones to celebrate. Because God has to begin to open up a heart, begins to change things in a life and begin to open them up to God before they ever get to a point of conversion. And we see this a lot right now in Alpha, which is a class that we've begun where people are able to come and ask these kind of questions and wrestle with faith. Atheists, agnostics coming in going, okay, I don't believe this stuff, but I at least want to have a conversation about it. Those are like -3, -4 type conversations that eventually we're believing are going to lead to a point of conversion. But that's the skeptic. They're waiting for it. That's not Thomas. Okay, Thomas is leaning in. Thomas is engaged. Thomas is wrestling with these questions, deep questions of what in the world is going on, because these things are not adding up. If we were to take a second and just kind of put ourselves in Thomas's sandals, if you will. I mean, here's a guy that for 3 years has spent every waking moment with Jesus. Like we don't really have the right context or words for this of what an actual disciple and his relationship with his rabbi was like in the first century. Like the closest thing, and it's still a distant, far off, but would be an apprentice, someone that's training under a master that's trying to learn a trade or learn something. But you could take that idea and dial it up by 10 or 12 and probably still not get there. Because a disciple, they were literally following step by step the food they ate, down to where they slept, what town they were in. Every teaching, every moment, they weren't just trying to learn a trade, they were trying to become the rabbi. And this was not just Jesus and his disciples, but every rabbi had disciples. And they were all learning their yoke or their way. And the whole hope was that, and even the blessing that they would speak over them is that may you be covered by the dust of your rabbi. In other words, may you be so close to your rabbi that you're so connected that even the dust from his feet is on you because you're right there with him all the time. That's Thomas. Literally with them. Like John actually tells us that the things that he recorded in his gospel, they're so small. The very last verse, he says, if I wrote everything down, all the books in the entire world would not contain all that Jesus did in 3 years. And Thomas was there for all of it. He was with him through thick and thin. Actually, scholars believe that the Gospel of John only records 21 days of Jesus' ministry. He ministered over 3 years. He ministered around about 1,000 days. Is how many days Jesus was in ministry. The Gospel of John gives us 21 of those. Just like put yourself there. Think like he is in this thing with him. He is the Messiah. Every day for 3 years, he is a little bit more convinced. I think this is him. This really is the Messiah. Look at what he's doing. 2 weeks ago, he raised Lazarus from the dead. Look at what he is doing day by day. I'm believing that this is the Messiah, and then he is dead. It is unexpected, this tragic, it's not just this tragic circumstantial death. All of a sudden, the Messiah, the guy that he thought was it, is dead, and he has no category in his mind for a dead Messiah. It just doesn't compute. Everything that he thought he knew, the direction that he was going, the beliefs that he had in his heart, all of a sudden something collided with it and he goes, I just don't even know anymore. He had absolutely no category for a dead Messiah. And again, we struggle fully understanding or grasping this, but if you were in first century kind of worldview and mindset, the way that they saw the world in the first century, this is going to shock you, is completely different than the way we see the world now. But their worldview was spiritual, not just Israel, but the entire Middle East, the entire up into Rome. It was a spiritual, everything had spiritual significance. Everything was by the gods. It was done by the gods. If your crops were dying, it was because the gods had cursed you. If there was rain and everything was growing and it was beautiful, it was because the gods had blessed you. Like this was their mindset. There was no weatherman. There was no science, right? There was no secular kind of mindset of understanding, rain comes in patterns and this is how the pressure and the this and the that and all this stuff works. No. It's just God either loves you or hates you. That's why you got rain. Right? If you struggled to have children, if your womb was closed, it was because the gods had cursed you. Not because of a biological issue, not because of something else going on. No, it was because the gods had cursed you. If your womb was open, the gods had just shined down on you. So in this perspective, the Jewish people, when they see this man killed, what they see is judgment by God. What they see is this man is cursed. This man has been killed. Therefore, God is judging him because he has done something wrong. And even hundreds of years earlier, Isaiah the prophet even predicted that this is the way people would see it. Look at this in Isaiah 53. And we thought his troubles were a punishment from God, a punishment for his own sins. So again, this is where Thomas is. Think of the web of emotions going on in his heart, in his mind. He's a man of reason. He's a man of information and details. We see this all through the story of the Gospels. He's trying to bring these things together and make sense of it all. And I could just imagine him on Easter Sunday. They're all locked up in this room. And I can imagine this kind of getting to be a little too much, and he just goes for a walk. He's like, I just got to have some space. Y'all stay hidden in a room. That's fine. I need to get out and do a little walk. Takes him a little walk on Easter Sunday morning. He comes back to the upper room and he does their little secret knock. You know, whatever their secret knock is to get in the door. He gets in the door and the disciples say, dude, you missed it. Jesus was just here in the room. You missed it. And I can just imagine all of these things, all of these questions, the why questions, all these things. And he just goes, whoa, wait a minute. Like, I can't believe this. Like, I don't understand this. This doesn't make any sense. Like I have to see him to believe this. You can't just tell me this. I have too many questions. The questions are too deep. I need to see him. That's where Thomas is. That's the moment Thomas is at. He is leaning in. He is pushing in. He is desperately wanting to see Jesus. Here's the thing. He has not left. This moment of doubt happens, and this moment of what we would call a crisis of faith. This moment of a crisis of faith happens, and Thomas doesn't walk away. He doesn't give up. He doesn't throw in the towel. He leans in. He wrestles. He fights. He has questions. Ultimately, what he's doing is he's looking for Jesus. And what I love about this story is this, is that Jesus meets Thomas right where he is, in the middle of his doubt. Right in the middle of his doubt. You know, we've given Thomas kind of a bad rap. You know, all through church history, he's been known as Doubting Thomas. Even to the point that you've probably said that to somebody at some point in your life, hey, don't be a Doubting Thomas. Right? It's just become something we say. That's not in Scripture. Jesus didn't give him that moniker. That's just something through church history has been labeled on him. But in a lot of ways, the other guys, they were not much more faithful. Right? But we've labeled him this way. And yet, whenever I look at Thomas, what I see is a guy that is desperately desiring to experience this resurrected Jesus. He has questions, all kinds of questions. But what he wants in this moment is to see Jesus. He's looking at the other disciples and he's going, listen, you got to see him. You got to experience him. Have you ever had that happen before? Where someone else in your life has had an experience with God and you go, man, I want that so bad. I want that same experience. I want to experience him in that same way. I want him to be real to me right now, like he's real to my buddy over here that just had this amazing experience with God. That's what Thomas is doing. And he's searching and he's seeking and he's asking questions. And here's what I want us to see, is that doubt can actually be an incredible ingredient to deeper faith. As a matter of fact, so often we don't get to deeper faith unless it's through doubt. Unless it's through asking the kind of questions that we need to ask to get to a deeper kind of faith. The key is that it begins with Jesus. And that's what we see with Thomas. His struggle, his fight, all the questions in this moment weren't answered. All he wanted was to see Jesus. The thing about our faith is that our faith is not just a blind leap into darkness. It's not just this blind leap. Our faith is trust in a person. Our faith is putting our trust in someone and trusting that he is good. Right? Trusting that he will lead us to all truth. So Jesus isn't intimidated by our doubt. Jesus isn't intimidated by our questions. And you know what's amazing about this? Is that whenever Jesus shows up to Thomas, he gives him what he asked for. Ever thought about that? Which, by the way, is exactly what the other disciples received. Thomas didn't ask for more than what they got. He just simply said, I want that same thing. I want to experience you in the same way. And what did Jesus do? He gave it to him. What that tells me is that doubt is not a sin. Doubt is not a sin. Having questions is not a sin. Just like Thomas, whenever this crisis of faith happens and you feel like, man, life is clicking, faith is clicking, everything seems to be moving in this direction. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I'm sideswiped by something that just doesn't compute. I love Jesus, I believe in Jesus, and then someone that I love got sick, someone died, something terrible happened, or or whatever it is, or deep questions. Someone posed deep questions, theological questions that I don't have answers for. And now my faith seems to be a little bit shaky, or all of a sudden now I've got deep questions of sexuality or identity and it just doesn't compute with me. There are all these other competing things that we just go, oh, wait a minute, I don't understand these things. And what we do so often is we take our hands off and we back away instead of doing what Thomas did and seeking Jesus. That's what he did. He just sought after Jesus, because when we seek Jesus, Jesus wants to go on the journey with us to find the answers. He wants to take us to that place of giving us the answers. Hey, look, here they are right here. But first, it starts with Jesus. He's not intimidated by our questions. He's not intimidated by our doubt. He wants you to experience him. In the book of Proverbs, there are kind of 4 different categories of people. And it talks about these categories of people different ways throughout the entire book. But through this lens of faith and doubt, I want to look at these 4 categories because I think and I hope that it may kind of shine a light on your own faith and how strong your faith is. The first one is this. The first one, throughout the book of Proverbs, this first group of people is just called the simple. These are the people that just don't know any better, okay? They just don't know any better, okay? In other words, it's the kind of people that has a faith that hasn't been tried and tested, okay? They just believe because they believe. They don't have a why behind it. They were told to believe something, or they just picked up something and ran with it, and they've never asked the deep questions of why. They have never dealt with those things. Actually, what we see and have seen for decades now is that you see this with children that are growing up in church, that they don't know the answers to the deeper questions of why they believe what they believe. They've been handed a faith. They've been handed kind of a secondhand Jesus. Hey, just believe this because we believe this. And then they get to college and a professor poses a certain question that just disrupts the entire faith system. Wait a minute, I've always been told this, now you're telling me that, and everything kind of just goes into shambles. Right? All of a sudden there's a crisis of faith because I just believe because I was told to believe. I don't know any better. I just believe it because I've been told to believe it. Right? For us adults, like these are the kind of questions we need to be asking ourselves. Why do I believe what I believe? How solid is my faith? How solid is my foundation? But if we've got kids, how important that is for us to train them, to mature them, to raise them up, not to just go to church, which is kind of the bare minimum, by the way, right? But for you, the number one discipler in the home, the number one discipler of your children, for you to teach them, for you to train them, for you to help them understand why they believe what they believe. I don't know about your kids. My kids ask a million questions, always, about everything. Right? And I thought about it this week, like my kids are always asking faith questions, always. And I don't know if your kids are asking faith questions, right? But they're probably asking questions about something. And what I thought about this week is it was an indicator to me, not because I'm a pastor, that is not it at all, but it is an indicator to me about how often we talk about faith things in our home because a lot of their questions revolve around faith. Does that make sense? Like, it's not because I'm great and I'm a pastor and I'm preaching to my family all the time. I'm not great at it. It takes a lot of work. But a lot of the questions, I'm serious, my 10-year-old will ask the kind of questions that I got to put my theology hat on and we got to go to school. Because her mind is curious and she's learning and she's growing. Like, that's the kind of thing, like our kids should be asking questions, but even if they're not, what are the things that we're teaching them? What are the things we're telling them? Right? And like I said, we as the church, we are your partners in this thing. And let me just kind of get on a little bit of a hobby horse for a second and just say, and especially those of you that maybe are still watching online right now, there's a lot of people still watching online. Hey, listen, it's time to get plugged in, committed, and connected to church, especially for your kids' sake. If you're coming to church once a month, once every other week or whatever, how much are your kids actually getting? Right? Our families need to be connected. We need to be learning and growing. We're talking about this all the time right now. Discipleship, right? That's what this is. It's learning the why behind what we believe. It's why we have Alpha class. And some of you right now, you may have deep questions of faith that you're like, man, some things are happening that just don't add up. Alpha is the place for you. All right? You may be a skeptic. You may be going, man, this is all just nonsense. Alpha is the place for you to learn some of those answers or to wrestle through some of those things. We have CityHope College for young adults. That's what it's there for. We have CityHope College PM for everybody else that wants to learn theology or the reasons why we believe what we believe. But man, it is up to us to step up and mature ourselves so that we are not this way, that we just don't believe because we believe. No, we have to know why we believe what we believe. The second category in Proverbs would be the fool. I don't know, maybe that's a little harsh, but that's what Proverbs calls it, the fool. This is a category of people, the people who do know, but they ignore what they know. In other words, these are the kind of people, they're foolish because yes, they have doubts, they have questions, they're pondering in the back of their head, but they've never voiced them, they've never done anything with them. They've never actually wrestled with them. They never actually opened up to other people and said, hey, listen, I'm struggling with this aspect of God or faith, and I need somebody to come alongside me and wrestle together. I'm trying to get to Jesus. I'm trying to get there, but I need help getting there. These people think maybe that having doubts is a sin and it's wrong, and so you just keep your mouth shut. But eventually, these doubts, these questions will come to the surface. And they will end up in a crisis of faith. And you and I probably know a lot of people in that boat that grew up around God, that grew up in faith, that you thought, man, they will be on fire for God for the rest of their life. And now they're angry with God and church and everything else, and they're running the other direction. Why? Because they didn't get questions. They didn't seek Jesus and wrestle with the questions of their faith. They just let them sit and simmer, and eventually they popped through the surface, and it ended everything. Snuck up on them. Okay, we cannot be that kind of person because what it leads to is the third category of people, and that's the scoffer. This would be the skeptic. These are the person who thinks they know better. This is the person that has completely walked away from the faith, and they look back and they say, that's ridiculous. I can't believe how gullible and ridiculous I was. I'm enlightened now. I have all the answers. I have everything figured out. That was ridiculous, and now here I am out here, arms crossed. I don't want anything to do with that stuff anymore. It is so hard to come back from this spot. But if we're simple and we move into being foolish, eventually, odds are, when a crisis of faith occurs, you wind up becoming a scoffer. Because what you're doing with those questions and doubts is you're not taking them to Jesus. You're doing the opposite. Thomas brought them to Jesus. He pressed in, he engaged, he struggled the right direction. But so often what we do is we go the opposite direction. And actually Jesus, in this moment with Thomas, he actually acknowledges this. He acknowledges this moment. He says right here in this moment is a critical point for you, Thomas. It's a critical point because you can easily kind of roll down this side of the hill and you could become a scoffer. Or you could decide to roll down this side of the hill into the fourth category that Proverbs calls the wise. The wise, the person who fears the Lord. And they're not called the wise because they have all the answers. Here's the thing about faith. You're never going to have all the answers. If you had all the answers, it wouldn't be called faith. We're not ever going to have all the answers, right? But what this means, the wise means, is that I have put God in the top place in my life, whether I have all the answers or not. And what this does is it changes everything. And this is exactly what Jesus is asking Thomas. When he says this line in verse 27, he says this. He says, do not disbelieve, but believe. Notice he doesn't even mention the word doubt. He doesn't even acknowledge the doubt. What he says is the critical moment here, Thomas, is whether you're going to believe in me or not. That's the critical moment. The critical moment isn't all these answers. We'll get to all those answers. What's most critical right now in this moment is, do you fear the Lord? Do you put me in the right spot in your life? Do you revere me, honor me? Is there an awe of God? And I'm literally at the top place in your life. Then we can go find some answers together. Then we can go on the journey and we can dig and we can wrestle and we can struggle and we can engage. But if I'm not in the top spot in your life, then this is not going to work out. Do you believe in me, Thomas? Do you put me in that place? In Proverbs, whenever it says the fear of the Lord, those who fear the Lord, that does not mean that you're afraid of him, right? Doesn't mean we're running and we're scared or we're hiding from God. No, it just simply means that we revere, we honor, we respect, we put him in the right place in our life. A couple of months ago, my middle daughter, or my middle child, and I went to Colorado. When the kids turn 10, I take them on a special, dad and kid trip, and it's just an awesome time. So she loves snow, so we went to Colorado just to play in the snow. And so we're standing there in Colorado, and there's all these mountains everywhere, these amazing, majestic, beautiful, powerful mountains everywhere, 15,000 feet tall, crazy. Okay, this is like the fear of the Lord. If I have never climbed a mountain in my life, just decided one day I'm gonna go climb a 14er. I'm gonna go climb a 14,000 foot mountain today, let's go. And I just went and did it, what would happen to me? I would probably get hurt, potentially killed, right? This is the idea of God, the majesty, the beauty, but also the raw power of God. You don't just casually come up to God. It's not just this thing that you just look at God like, willy-nilly, I'll do whatever I want to do. No, God's saying, listen, you got to fear me like you better fear that mountain, right? He doesn't want to hurt you. That mountain doesn't want to hurt me. But if I just casually approach that mountain, odds are I'm going to get hurt. Okay? But if I enter that thing with respect and I walk up to that thing prepared and ready, like that's the picture of fearing the Lord, that we put God in this rightful place in our life and we understand that he is big and he is mighty and he is powerful. And that's what Jesus is saying to Thomas, put me in that place. Don't disbelieve, but believe. Don't disbelieve, believe. Because if you trust me, then we can get through all these questions. We'll get through the doubt. Lean in, engage, trust me. And then Thomas says this in verse 28. He says, my Lord and my God. One of the most profound statements in the entire New Testament. The realization, the moment that Thomas, that Jesus went from rabbi and teacher and possible Messiah and all these amazing things to the moment that Thomas said, yep, you are my God. I don't have all the answers yet. It's not figured out yet. But I trust you. And I trust that together we can go there. But at the end of the day, our faith is about Jesus. The starting point of our faith is not information and data and theology. The starting point of our faith is not rules and values. The starting point of our faith is not even a story. The starting point of our faith is, do you believe in a person named Jesus Christ? And that's the question he asked him. Do you believe in me? If you believe in me, then we can go on a journey together. But do you believe in Jesus? Is Jesus in that top place in your life? If not, then the questions and the doubt and the circumstances and all the things will rattle your faith to the core if he's not in the rightful place in your heart. It changes everything. I want to wrap this up by just giving you 3 just quick final thoughts, just kind of walk out the door thoughts. And the first one is this, is keep looking for Jesus. Man, if there's a question, if there's a doubt, if you're wrestling, look for Jesus first. Look for him, and then let him go on the journey with you. Listen, he's not afraid of questions. If you ever read the Psalms are full of what are called laments, where literally David is going, why, God? Why are the wicked always winning? Why is there so many injustice in the world? Why have you turned your back on me? He's praying these things, but then he ends the psalm by saying, but you're God and I'm not. And I love you and I honor you. I respect you. I'm confident in you. Even though I've got all these questions, I love you. My faith is in you. First thing is just keep looking for Jesus, because you will find him. In the middle of your doubt, in the middle of your questions, he will be there if you are honestly looking for him. I've never, ever, ever heard of anyone that went looking for Jesus that did not find him. Ever. The second thing is this, is stay engaged in healthy community. This is what we see from Thomas. This is 8 days later. 8 days later, and where is he? He's still right there with his boys. He's still right there in that room, showing up to the prayer meetings, showing up behind locked doors. They're still all holed up together. He hasn't run off. He hasn't turned his back. He hasn't walked away. He has stayed right there with a healthy community. Not people that are going to fuel the doubt, not people that are going to pour gasoline and vitriol and anger and hatred. No. He stayed right there with his boys, and he said, hey, listen, I'm struggling with this. I got questions. I don't understand why y'all got to see him and I didn't. I don't get it all, but I'm staying right here in my community with my people. And then the third thing is this, is show mercy to others. In the book of Jude, it's only one chapter long, but in verse 22 it says, be merciful to those who doubt. This is to everybody else. There are people right here in our community that are walking through doubt. And the Bible tells us to be merciful to those people. In other words, to come alongside them, to walk with them, to be with them. Those of you that are older, both older in age and older in the faith, man, come alongside the younger generations. And I know they're going to believe a little different. The culture's a little different, like their thoughts are a little different. Hey, come alongside them, help them, walk with them. Listen, they not only need your perspective, but they also need your connection. They need to be connected to you. Right? We are in this thing together, but the Bible tells us, come alongside each other. Let's seek this out. Let's search this out together. All right? Not isolated, not disconnected. We shouldn't be turned off by someone's questions. Man, when somebody has questions, this is where they should come, to this community. They shouldn't feel like, I got to take those questions to the internet. God knows we don't need to take no questions to the internet. Right? We come here, we bring it here. Why? This is a trusted place. We're all seeking Jesus together. We're all looking for him. We all want to experience the resurrected Jesus in our life. That's what we need, every single one of us. We need the experience Thomas had, where he looks at him and he goes, I have found him. I've had an experience. I am literally with the risen Christ right now, my Lord, my God. That's what every single one of us need. That's the journey that we're on as a church. To have that experience personally with Jesus Christ, every single one of us. And I hope and I pray that for some of you, that's what you're looking for. And I'm believing that if you press in and you keep looking, you're going to find him. He's going to show up. And maybe this is more speaking to people that have been engaged in faith and then maybe have stepped away or have questions. And some of you may have walked in the room and you are a little bit more on the skeptic side of things. And you got a lot of questions. Hey, listen, this is a safe place to explore. That's why we have a class like Alpha that is literally built for that. It's not a class where we're teaching you everything. It's a class where we wrestle together and we learn together. We work together. We try to find and dig and study for the answers. It's not just downloaded to you, but it's a journey together. It's a beautiful experience. But my hope, my prayer is that today you encounter the resurrected Jesus, and that you would put him in that top place in your life, that you would believe in him. Let's pray. God, we just love you. And Jesus, I thank you that you are here, that you are with us. And Lord, I know so many people in this room right now, God, maybe they don't know all the whys. Maybe they have questions and they've never even engaged those questions. But God, I pray that today it would begin with just meeting you and then bringing you those questions and allowing you the opportunity to walk us to answers, to guide us and direct us as the shepherd that you are. That step by step, you would illuminate the steps in front of us, that you would guide us to the place, Lord, where every question of our heart that needs to be answered would be answered. And those that we just need to believe you and trust you for, God, that we would just trust you for those things. But ultimately, God, that we would put you on that top place in our life. Lord, I think about and pray for all the wayward sons and daughters, God, that maybe are represented in this room that have stepped away or have walked away, turned their back on you. I pray right now, God, that just through supernatural means, Lord, those things, those relationships, those people would just be turned around. God, that just supernaturally something would begin to change, something would begin to happen. God, that we would see miracle after miracle after miracle. God, if people return to you, God, because they've experienced you, because they've seen you. And Lord, I pray that today we would experience you. The same God today, the same resurrected Jesus 2,000 years ago is right here in the room right now. May we meet you today. Just keep your head bowed for just a moment. I want to give you an opportunity right now to simply surrender your life to Jesus. Just to simply ask him to come into your life, which just means that you're putting your faith in him. It just means that you're trusting him, just like he asked Thomas, hey, believe in me. It just means that you're going to believe in Jesus, that he will be the most important part of your life. If you want to make that decision and pray that prayer, would you just raise your hand real quick? Wherever you are in the room, just lift up your hand. I see 1 or 2 hands right now. Go ahead and lift your hand. Anybody at the campuses? Let's pray this prayer together. If you raise that hand, just pray. Actually, let's all pray. Pray, Jesus, I want to put my trust in you today. I want to believe in you. I give you my life, and I ask that you come into mine, that you would change everything about me. Forgive me, cleanse me. I give you my life. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Can we celebrate? Come on, let's put our hands together.
Thank you so much for watching and being a part of City Hope. And listen, if you feel like you need to take a step, maybe it's a decision to follow Jesus or getting prayer for something that's going on in your life, or maybe it's even just getting connected to our church and growing in community with other believers, we want to give you the opportunity to do that. So right now, there's a QR code coming up on our screen. Follow the link and give us the opportunity to connect with you. Because if we know anything, it's that content alone is never gonna help you find the life change that God has for you. So look, give us the opportunity to connect with you. We'd love to get to know you and help you grow and be a part of our church. But we love you. Can't wait to see you next time right here at City Hope.